They say love makes you do crazy things. For me, it made me empty my life savings, work 3 grueling jobs, and put my own dreams on hold. All for him, all for his future. I was so sure he was the one. We had it all planned out, every detail sketched in my mind. His graduation, our marriage, our life together thriving. But the day he walked across that stage, diploma in hand, my entire world imploded. He looked at me, then almost imperceptibly, at someone else, and uttered 2 words that didn't just shatter my heart, they atomized everything I believed in. He dumped me for his classmate, and I was left with nothing but a mountain of student loan debt that wasn't even mine, staring at a future that had suddenly become a terrifying blank canvas. I'm Sarah. I was 22, fresh out of college myself, working as a junior accountant in Denver, Colorado. Life was pretty stable, maybe a little predictable, but I was building something for myself. Then I met Mark. He was 23, incredibly charming, incredibly ambitious, and to my eyes, utterly brilliant. He had this burning dream of going to a top-tier business school, Wharton specifically, but his family, like many, simply couldn't afford the staggering tuition. He worked a minimum wage job, barely scraping by, always talking about the frustration of feeling stuck. I saw his passion, his fierce hunger to achieve something big, something meaningful, and I fell hard, completely and irrevocably. He'd talk for hours about his future, painting vivid pictures, and in every single one of them, I was right there beside him. "We'll be a power couple, Sarah," he'd say, his voice full of conviction, holding my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "Once I get my MBA, we can build anything together. Anything." I believed him with every fiber of my being. I pictured us, years down the line, successful, happy, looking back at these early struggles and laughing. I just knew he was different. He promised me the world, and I, foolishly, gave him mine. So I made a choice. It was a huge, life-altering decision. I had inherited a decent sum from my grandmother, money I'd planned to use for a down payment on a small condo or maybe even to go back to school myself for a master's in financial planning. But Mark's dream, fueled by his passion and my love, quickly became our dream. It consumed my thoughts, reshaped my priorities. He needed about $60,000 for tuition and living expenses for his first year at Wharton, a figure that felt immense but achievable, somehow, with both of us. I went to the bank. I wrote him a check for nearly all of my inheritance. "This isn't just money, Mark," I remember telling him, my voice trying to sound confident, ignoring the knot of fear and apprehension coiling in my stomach. "This is an investment in our future. All of it." He thanks me profusely, his eyes shining with what I thought was gratitude. In my naive mind, it wasn't a joke. It made me feel secure, cherished, like we were truly partners in this massive undertaking. For the next 2 grueling years while he studied in the hallowed halls of Wharton in Philadelphia, I worked like a dog back in Denver. My accounting job during the day became a blur. Then, 3 nights a week, I was waitressing, wiping down tables, endearing rude customers, my feet aching. On weekends, I picked up extra shifts, anything to earn another dollar. My friends barely saw me, my social life evaporated. I lived frugally, ate ramen noodles more often than I care to admit, wore hand-me-downs from my older sister. Every single extra dollar, every tip, every bonus went directly into his account for his second year of tuition, for books, for his rent in that expensive city. He sent me cute texts, called me his angel, his rock, his hero. He'd come home for holidays, exhausted but brimming with stories about his demanding classes, his brilliant new friends, the undeniable prestige of Wharton. He'd always look me in the eyes and say, with a practiced sincerity, "Soon, Sarah, soon all this will pay off for us. It's for our life." I endured the loneliness, the crushing exhaustion, the constant feeling of sacrificing, all for that single, shining promise. I just kept reminding myself, it's for our future, it has to be. Looking back now with the brutal clarity of hindsight, the red flags weren't just waving, they were flapping wildly in a hurricane. But I was too deep, too emotionally invested, too exhausted to see them for what they were. He started calling less frequently, his excuses always about being swamped with studies, buried under projects. Our phone calls became shorter, rushed, more about his demanding day and less about our life, our relationship. He'd barely ask about my triple shifts or my aching feet. When he came home for spring break of his final year, he seemed different, more polished, yes, but also more distant, more confident in a way that felt almost arrogant. It was like he'd stepped into a new skin, and I didn't quite recognize the man inside it. He talked about his classmates constantly, especially one named Chloe. He'd say, "Chloe's brilliant, Sarah. She's going to be a force in finance." Or, "Chloe and I aced that presentation together. We're the dream team." I brushed it off. Just a classmate, right? A study partner. Besides, I trusted him. I loved him. My heart was fully committed. Then came the moment that, had I been truly awake, should have screamed betrayal. One night, barely a month before his graduation, I decided to fly out to Philadelphia to surprise him. I hadn't seen him in person for what felt like an eternity, and I was so excited, clutching a bouquet of flowers as I walked into his apartment building. I let myself into his apartment, eager to see his surprised face. He wasn't there. but the apartment wasn't empty.
A woman's sweater, not mine, was draped casually over his armchair. A delicate scarf, unmistakably feminine, lay on his bedside table. And in his bathroom, next to his shaving kit, was a new toothbrush, not mine. My blood ran cold, a glacial realization spreading through my veins. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, suffocating. I confronted him when he finally came home, trying desperately to keep my voice calm, to hide the tremor in my hands. He looked genuinely shocked to see me, then his face hardened into annoyance. Sarah, he sighed, his voice laced with exasperation. Don't be ridiculous. Chloe helps me with my studies. She just left some things here. Are you really that insecure? You're making a big deal out of nothing. He somehow, effortlessly, made me feel stupid, paranoid, the jealous girlfriend. I apologized, desperate to believe him, desperate to erase the terrifying images from my mind. Why did I do that? Why did I always back down? Always choose to trust him even when every instinct screamed otherwise? Graduation day finally arrived. I flew back to Philadelphia, my heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and overwhelming anticipation. This was it. The culmination of all my sacrifices, all those grueling shifts, all those lonely nights. This was the moment our shared dream came true. My parents were there too, beaming, sitting beside me, so incredibly proud of their future son-in-law. We sat in the massive audience, a sea of caps and gowns before us, a buzz of excitement filling the air. When Mark's name was finally called, a thrill shot through me. I cheered, clapped until my hands actually hurt, a silent anthem of all my years of effort. He walked across the stage, accepted his diploma, looked out at the vast crowd, and for a split second, his eyes met mine. He smiled, a proud, confident, radiant smile. My heart swelled, ready to burst with pride. This was our victory. But then, as he walked off stage, he didn't come towards us. He didn't even glance in our direction. He veered left, directly towards a group of students waiting by the side. And there she was, Chloe, tall, confident, effortlessly elegant in a crisp white dress under her graduation gown. Mark reached her, a wide, genuine smile on his face, took her hand, and they walked out of the hall together, laughing, holding hands, seemingly oblivious to the thousands of people around them. My stomach dropped. A cold, heavy dread seeped into my bones, spreading rapidly, paralyzing me. My parents looked at each other, then back at me, their faces slowly morphing from pride to confusion, then dawning horror. The celebratory roar of the crowd, the joyous music, the vibrant colors of the day, it all faded into a dull, distant thrum. The world, my world, spun violently on its axis, then completely toppled over. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. All I could see was their clasped hands, walking away from me. I waited by the exit, my parents by my side, forcing a smile that felt like it was tearing my face. My hands were clammy, my palms sweating. The air felt heavy, charged with unspoken truths. Mark finally emerged from the chaotic post-ceremony crowd, still with Chloe, still holding her hand, still laughing at something she had said, utterly absorbed in her. He looked so happy, so free. Then he saw me. His smile faltered, just for a second. His eyes flickered, looking from me to Chloe, then back to me, an unreadable expression on his face, a mix of discomfort, maybe a hint of guilt, but mostly an unsettling coldness. Chloe, sensing the sudden tension, looked a little uncomfortable, glancing between us, then pretended to be absorbed in her phone. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry, tight. Mark, I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper, thin and reedy. What is going on? He dropped Chloe's hand then, almost imperceptibly. He sighed, a loud, exasperated sound, as if I was the unreasonable one, the inconvenience. Sarah, we need to talk. He pulled me a few feet aside, away from Chloe, but close enough that my parents, watching with growing alarm from a distance, could see his dismissive body language. His voice was low, devoid of any warmth, any of the affection he'd shown me for years. Look, this isn't working. We're in different places now. I've met someone. He glanced briefly at Chloe, who was now pretending to be completely absorbed in her phone, but I could feel her presence, her knowing, her silent victory. Chloe and I, we have a connection, a future. He paused, then added the cruelest, most casual part, a phrase that would haunt me for months. It's not you. It's just, you don't fit into my new life anymore. I'm sorry. And then, impossibly, he actually tried to shake my hand, like a business acquaintance at a networking event. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. My parents, seeing my collapse, rushed over. My dad's face was thunderous, a storm brewing. My mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. Not after everything. The next few days were a blur of tears, disbelief, and furious, desperate phone calls to Mark that went unanswered. He packed his bags, moved out of his Philadelphia apartment, and vanished from my life as swiftly as he'd entered it. No apologies, no explanations, just a dismissive text message saying he'd pay me back when he could. A hollow promise. When I, shaking, looked at our joint bank statements, the full, sickening truth hit me like a sledgehammer. He'd already moved most of his own savings, nearly $50,000, into a new, separate account, leaving our joint account almost empty. The initial inheritance, all the money I'd sent for his second year, every single dollar I'd sacrificed, it was effectively gone. Just gone. My dream condo, my plans for a master's degree, all sacrificed for a man who didn't even have the decency to break up with me before openly parading his new girlfriend around. Then, the final, agonizing twist. A mutual friend from Wharton, someone I'd met through Mark, called me. His voice was hesitant, apologetic. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I heard what happened, but you need to know something, for your own good. Mark and Chloe, they've been together for months, since his second semester, almost a year and a half. Everyone knew. They weren't just study partners. They were always together, going to events, staying at his place. My stomach churned, a wave of nausea washing over me. He hadn't just dumped me. He had systematically, brazenly, cheated on me for over a year, while I was working myself to the bone, pouring every last dollar, every last ounce of my hope and belief into his supposed future. He had lied, systematically, to my face, to my parents, to everyone who asked, all while accepting my money, my sacrifices, my unwavering faith in him. The betrayal wasn't just emotional heartbreak. It was a profound violation of trust, a calculated, cold-blooded exploitation. It was a crime against my spirit. The initial sadness transmuted into a burning, white-hot fury. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was enraged in a way I'd never experienced. I gathered every single piece of evidence I could find. Screenshots of our old texts where he promised repayment, bank statements clearly showing my transfers to his account, emails discussing our future and our investment. My parents, once shocked and devastated, were now incandescent with a righteous rage that mirrored my own. My dad, who had a background as a former lawyer before becoming a businessman, helped me. We contacted a lawyer specializing in promissory notes and financial fraud. We argued that the money I gave him was not a gift, but an investment made under the explicit understanding of a future together, an investment in a shared life that he had fraudulently misrepresented. It felt like a long shot, a desperate attempt, but I had nothing left to lose. I had already lost everything. The legal process was agonizingly slow, painfully formal. Mark, through his own lawyer, tried to argue it was simply a gift, that I was just a bitter ex trying to cause trouble. But we had the texts, his own words about our investment, his prenup jokes that now sounded chillingly manipulative, and the timeline of his relationship with Chloe, which my lawyer meticulously uncovered through various records and witness testimonies, clearly showed his deception, the systematic cheating that ran parallel to my financial contributions. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, calculated, cold. We filed a civil lawsuit against him for the full $60,000 I'd given him, plus interest, arguing that the money was provided under fraudulent pretenses. The legal fees were mounting, quickly draining my remaining small savings, but my parents, seeing his true colors, surprisingly stepped up to help, furious at how their daughter had been used. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about holding him accountable. It was about justice, pure and simple, and reclaiming my own dignity. The case never actually went to trial. The evidence we presented, meticulously compiled by my lawyer, was simply too strong, too damning. The inconsistencies in Mark's own story were too glaring, his lies too transparent. His lawyers knew he was in deep trouble. 2 months after he graduated, just as he was about to step into the life he'd so carefully constructed, Mark's new world came crashing down. He was on the verge of starting a prestigious, highly coveted job at a top investment bank in New York, the kind of role that sets you up for life. Our lawyer, in a calculated move, contacted his new firm, discreetly providing them with details of the ongoing lawsuit and the allegations of fraud. Apparently, the firm had a strict, zero-tolerance policy for any legal issues or ethical breaches, especially concerning potential fraud, even in civil cases. They rescinded his job offer. Just like that, his golden ticket was revoked. Suddenly, Mark's defiant tune changed. He called me, frantic, his voice laced with desperation, begging me to drop the suit. He sounded like the old Mark, charming and pleading, but it was just another act. He claimed I was ruining his life, that I was still the bitter ex out for revenge. You're going to destroy my entire career. Sarah, this is insane. Please. But I just listened, cold and detached. The emotional connection had been severed too long ago. I told him my terms, clear and unwavering. Pay back every single cent of the $60,000, or the lawsuit proceeds, and I would make absolutely sure every other firm he applied to would know exactly why his dream job disappeared. He tried to haggle, to negotiate a lower amount. I wouldn't budge. My lawyer, equally unyielding, finalized the settlement. He returned the full $60,000 I'd given him, plus an additional $10,000 to cover some of my legal fees and the lost interest on my inheritance. It wasn't perfect. It didn't heal the emotional wounds, but it was a concrete victory. The ultimate satisfaction wasn't the money, though. It was the stark, undeniable knowledge that his carefully constructed, deceitful future had been fundamentally shaken. He might rebuild, but it would never be the same. It's been 3 years since that chaotic, life-altering graduation day. I eventually used that $60,000, the money I fought so hard to reclaim, plus what I diligently saved since, as a down payment on a small but beautiful condo here in Denver, just like I had originally planned years ago. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a physical manifestation of my resilience. I'm also back in school, part-time, finally pursuing that master's degree in finance that I'd put on hold. It's hard, working full-time and studying nights, but it's my path now, not someone else's. It's a future I'm building for myself, by myself. I haven't heard from Mark since the settlement. I heard through the grapevine that he eventually got a job, but at a much smaller, less prestigious firm, nowhere near the elite investment bank he'd envisioned. Chloe? I sometimes see her name pop up on LinkedIn in finance articles. They're still together, last I checked. Good for them, I guess. It doesn't sting anymore. The emotional scars run deep, though. Trusting someone so completely, giving so much of myself, only to be so utterly and systematically betrayed, changes you fundamentally. I'm much more guarded now, much slower to open up, especially about money and relationships. But I'm also undeniably stronger, more self-reliant. I learned that my self-worth isn't tied to someone else's success or approval, and that standing up for yourself, even when it feels terrifying and the odds seem stacked against you, is the most empowering thing you can do. It was a painful, expensive lesson, but it taught me about my own resilience, my own strength. It taught me the true, devastating cost of blind love, and the invaluable price of self-respect. So, was I wrong to fight for my money? Was it just petty revenge, or was it a necessary act of justice? Would you have done the same, or simply walked away and cut your losses?